It's been more than 2 weeks since 26 people were brutally murdered in broad daylight.
वही था कोई दिसता जहांगीर तो क्या बिहारियां पीछे चलते यार तुम मौत की कसमें गिर गई वो ता चलते यार
Not on a battlefield, but in Kashmir's Pahalgam. A beautiful tourist valley was turned into a killing ground by a group of terrorists. And this isn't the first time India has seen something like this unfold. Over the last 2 decades, there's been a chilling pattern. Terror groups based in Pakistan, often backed by its either military or intelligence agencies, carry out attacks in India. Pakistan officially denies any involvement. The world condemns the violence, tensions spike, and then slowly things return to normal until it happens again. So after Pahalgam, what are India's options? Let's break it down. But before we dig deeper, this is Press Freedom Week, a reminder that independent journalism matters now more than ever. At the News Minute, we don't just report stories, we hold power to account and follow the facts wherever they lead us. If you value this kind of journalism, here's something special. When you subscribe today, you can pass it on too. Gift a free subscription to someone else who cares. So become a News Minute subscriber by scanning the QR code on your screen, and if you're watching from abroad, then click the link in the description. And remember, a new episode of Let Me Explain drops every Saturday. So what are India's options post-Pahalgam? Not just the dramatic ones you hear on primetime TV.
अरे कान खर खोल के सुनो पाकिस्तानियों, पूरा भारत जंग चाहता है तुम्हारे साथ.
But the serious ones. Ones that span the political, military and diplomatic space. First of all, the government has already taken some steps. The strongest one was the suspension of the Indus Water Treaty, a long-standing agreement on river water sharing. Pakistan hit back with its own set of countermeasures. They alleged India had no proof of its involvement in the attack. They also threatened to suspend the Simla Agreement, the 1972 peace accord signed after the Bangladesh War. For over 5 decades, this document has formed the basis for bilateral engagement between the two nations. The agreement committed India and Pakistan to resolving all disputes, including Kashmir, bilaterally and peacefully. Reconsidering the Simla Agreement will give Pakistan more room to internationalize the Kashmir issue, something it's wanted to do for a long time now. Without the bilateral clause in place, Islamabad could try to push the matter more aggressively at the UN or seek outside mediation from allies like China or blocs like the OIC. But here's the catch. By stepping away from this agreement, Pakistan is also weakening one of the few diplomatic frameworks that keeps direct dialogue with India open. Even during periods of extreme tension, both sides have leaned on this agreement to say, let's talk even if we disagree. If that's off the table, the pressure builds with fewer options to diffuse it. Also, without the Simla Agreement, New Delhi feels freer to dismiss talks altogether, ramp up pressure, and even build new alliances that isolate Pakistan diplomatically. So while it might seem like a power move by Pakistan, it actually isn't. Even India's threat of suspending the Indus Water Treaty could affect both sides. The treaty is a decades-old agreement brokered by the World Bank in 1960. And it governs how the Indus River system's water are shared between India and Pakistan. For Pakistan, it's existential. Almost 80% of its agriculture depends on Indus Basin. But there is a catch for India too. Building and rerouting dams isn't something you can do overnight. So while it might feel satisfying to turn off the tap, there could be long-term consequences, environmentally, politically, and diplomatically. It does give India the option to block inspections by Pakistan and not share any data, and this could hit Pakistan. The real political challenge is at home.
वही था कोई दिसता जहांगीर तो क्या बिहारियां पीछे चलते यार तुम मौत की कसमें गिर गई
This attack happened in Kashmir, but it hit civilians, tourists. It's testing the claim that Kashmir is peaceful and under control.
भाजपा एक ऐसा जम्मू कश्मीर बनाने जा रही है जो जम्मू कश्मीर टेरर फ्री होगा और टूरिस्ट के लिए स्वर्ग होगा.
That means the government will need to rethink its Kashmir policy, not just with a heavier hand, but with more accountability, more political dialogue, and yes, more engagement with Kashmiri voices. Meanwhile, there's been a lot of chatter on primetime news, in political circles, and across social media about whether India should carry out another military strike across the border. Some are already drawing comparisons to the Balakot airstrikes of 2019. Balakot was actually a significant departure from the past practice. For a long time, restraint was the default. After the 2001 Parliament attack, India launched Operation Parakram. It was a major military build-up, but it stopped short of war. The aim was deterrence. In 2008, the Mumbai attacks killed 175 people. Yet, India chose diplomacy and internal security over retaliation. Things changed after 2016 following the Pathankot attack. Remember, Prime Minister Modi had just made a goodwill visit to Pakistan, and even after the attack, India invited Pakistani investigators. But cooperation went nowhere. That moment reset expectations. Restraint gave way to reaction. So after Uri, India carried out surgical strikes. After Pulwama, it launched the Balakot airstrikes, the first cross-border airstrike since 1971. So when an attack like Pahalgam happens, there's always the debate. How do we strike back? In fact, when we say military response, the first thing that comes to mind is a strike. Boots on ground, missiles in the air. But we have to also remember that we are dealing with a nuclear-armed neighbor. This is why experts are saying India should first strengthen its position smartly. First, force mobilization. This doesn't necessarily mean invasion. It means showing presence. India can move more troops into key sectors along the line of control. We've done this before. It puts pressure on the adversary and gives our forces tactical advantage. Next comes a recruitment push. The aim? Expand the army and paramilitary, especially at the borders. But recruitment has dropped. From 2020 to 2022, COVID halted major drives. By 2023, the army faced 136,000 vacancies. The gap isn't just in soldiers, there's a shortage of officers too, especially majors and captains. And then there's counter-terror ops. A limited precision strike on terrorist camps across the line of control is possible if there's credible intel and the political will. Indian intelligence, by the way, routinely tracks launch pads and camps along the LOC. India can also deploy its navy to block Pakistani merchant ships. It can disrupt trade routes and put economic pressure on Pakistan's trade-reliant elite. But this would be considered an act of aggression under the international law. Covert operations, which are more discreet, more deniable, are another route. But these don't just happen in reaction, but are a long, continuous exercise. Cyber retaliation is also on the table, especially since asymmetric warfare is no longer just about guns and bombs. But here's the key. Any military action has to be smart, surgical, and backed by strategy and not reach. The problem with this government is its theatrics.
India will identify, track, and punish every terrorist.
While it has almost always helped it politically, it is also a burden. A wrong move can escalate fast, and India has a lot to lose from regional instability. Diplomacy, meanwhile, is a slower process, but it's just as important, if not more. India can take the issue to international platforms, highlight Pakistan's role in hosting terror groups, and ask for more global pressure on Pakistan. It has to focus on building international consensus, strengthening counter-terrorism efforts, and ensuring that its diplomatic stance doesn't fuel more tensions with Pakistan. But the most important measure is local engagement with Kashmiris, slowly and strongly building trust in conflict-prone zones. In Kashmir, security needs to reassure, not alienate. India's counter-terror efforts should grow, but with sensitivity. Locals should feel safe, not oppressed. Tourists and residents must see government's commitment to peace. But let's not forget the big picture. The attack in Pahalgam isn't just about one tragic event. It's also about Kashmir and its future. Since 2019, Kashmir has been in turmoil with thousands of arrests and a massive crackdown on civil liberties. While the government has claimed that it's bringing peace and stability to the region,
जम्मू कश्मीर में आतंकवाद अब अपनी अंतिम सांसें गिन रहा है
and that there is zero terrorism, the ground reality is different. Many believe that the government pushed the normalcy narrative too far. Tourism is crucial to Kashmir's economy, contributing nearly 7% to its GDP. Attacks like this devastate the livelihoods of ordinary Kashmiris. But they also want a sense of autonomy which has been eroded over the years. And this attack only adds to their sense of alienation and insecurity. Whatever be the response India opts to take, this is something we cannot overlook. By the way, if you have been following the news lately, you've likely seen hate-mongering on many news channels, not just against Pakistan, but against a section of Indians, our fellow countrymen. If this isn't the India you believe in, it's time to start by changing the media that shapes it. Support journalism that informs and not divides, that questions power and not the people. Take a stand today and become a News Minute subscriber.